Hello and welcome to Cooking with Miss Michelle. Today I'm going to show you how to make your own sourdough starter. Sourdough starters are fun because you can use the sourdough to make all different things like sourdough pancakes, sourdough bread, waffles, and pretzels, which I'm going to show you in the next video. So sourdough starter has been around for thousands of years. Bakers actually used to use sourdough starter before they had packaged yeast available. So they would keep their sourdough starter so they would have yeast that they could use to make bread and things that they needed yeast for. So basically we're just going to catch some wild yeast, and all you need is flour and water. So you're going to mix equal parts of flour and water. And this is actually going to take about 5 days to get going. So you're also going to need some patience for this one. So I'm going to use 1 cup of flour, and I'm going to use 1 cup of water. I can use cold or lukewarm water. I never want to use hot water because hot water can actually kill the yeast. So I'm just going to get a cup of water. And I'm just going to stir it into my flour. And I'm going to use a whisk to make sure there's no chunks. And I just want to make sure all my flour gets hydrated by the water and there's no dry flour left in the bowl. So I'm going to give that a good stir. So there's actually yeast all over. There's yeast on the counter, there's yeast on my hands, there's yeast in the flour, and there's yeast in the air in my house. So each sourdough starter will be unique to you and your environment. Once this is all mixed up, all I have to do is wait for the wild yeast to start producing. So if I leave this out in the room temperature, the yeast is going to start multiplying, and this is actually going to come to life. So you can either cover it with some cheesecloth or a clean dish towel. Cheesecloth will have a little bit of holes in it to let more wild yeast through. Since I don't have any cheesecloth, I'm just going to use a clean towel, and I'm just going to leave a little bit open so some wild yeast can get in there. So that's all I'm going to do for right now. I'm going to leave this on my counter where it won't get disturbed. I'm going to leave it for 24 hours, and for 5 days I'm going to come back. On the first day I'm going to take a half a cup of the sourdough starter out. So I'm just going to take a half cup out, dump that out, and I'm going to add another cup of flour and water and stir it back together. I'm going to do that every day for 5 days. And I want to try to do it around the same time every day. So if I do it in the morning, I want to do it every morning, or if I do it at night, I want to do it every night. Now by the 5th day, your starter should have a bunch of bubbles in it, and it's going to smell kind of sour. And then you'll have your sourdough starter. Now once you make your sourdough starter, you can keep it forever. You can keep it going and going and going. I have some sourdough starter from my uncle. This was made in May of 1962. So it's about 58 years old. This sourdough starter actually had its own 58th birthday, its own 50th birthday party when it turned 50. So after you make your own sourdough starter, you're gonna wanna get a little flip top jar like this to keep it in, or you can keep it in a jar with a plastic lid. A mason jar with a metal lid isn't great for this because the lid will eventually rust. So if you keep it in a mason jar, you want that just to be temporary until you get a jar like this, so no metal will touch. One thing I forgot to mention too, when you make your sourdough starter, you want to do it in a glass or ceramic or a food safe plastic bowl. You never want to use a metal bowl to make sourdough starter. This sourdough starter pretty much stays in the fridge all the time. And when I want to use it, I just take it out, give it equal parts flour and water, and let it sit on my counter overnight. If I want to make a recipe that has lots of sourdough starter, I can add 2 cups of flour, 2 cups of water. If I want to make some to give to a friend, I could get another jar going. I could pour half this in another jar and feed both jars. I don't want to get it too full because this will start to grow. So I just took this out and fed it. I'm going to use some of this before I put it back in the fridge. I probably wouldn't want to put it back in this full because it might bubble over. So you can see in here it's a little bit bubbly. It'll probably get more bubbly if I leave it overnight. But I just took it out, so it's not too bubbly yet. So I'll have to check back in a little bit. But you can see there's a little bit of bubbles in there. So in my next video, I will show you how to make sourdough pretzels.